So a few days ago, someone made the most unfortunate possible tweet about the Harrification of Joe Jonas and how it's going well. And not to be a buzzkill, but the way that male expression through fashion in particular has been so westernized and whitewashed to the point where anytime a man wears anything other than a t-shirt and some pants, people think that they are the epitome of like queering gender dynamics. It's just getting a little sad. And then what got me was a person responding to that tweet by saying, white people arguing over which white man is paving the way for non-gender conforming fashion, and you see the fit and it's something a K-pop star would have worn in 2009. To which I replied that we should roll back the clock even further to the 70s and 80s when you had groups like the Isley Brothers, Earth, Wind and Fire, you had people like Prince Rogers Nelson, literally wearing those same exact fits. So to attribute that impact to a K-pop group that was actually emulating Black American fashion is pretty laughable. I feel like non-gender conforming fashion has always been almost like a tradition for Black American men in particular. And the reason why I believe that is because if you look at gender and how it was constructed, specifically as a means of population control for white Europeans, non-white people were rarely ever factored into that definition. Like when people think male, female, they often think white male, they often think white female, which is why the Black body is either pushed to the side, dissected, or objectified in the way that it is. If maleness and femness belong to humanity and Black people are rarely ever looked at as human, I just don't think that we fit within that gender dynamic that was created by white people. And I think that's something that's been reflected in Black people's sense of fashion since we've been able to have and create a sense of fashion. But what I find most interesting is that clearly these examples of Black men in particular queering fashion or doing non-gender conforming fashion have always been there. But I feel like they're scandalized in the moment, and then the pendulum kind of swings into homophobia, and it's not really praised. You just get blatant homophobia or blatant transphobia, whatever. And then it's almost immediately erased from history, and people act like it didn't happen until it gets put on a white man's body. And just because Black people weren't thought of when gender was being created, clearly it was something that was meant to subjugate us, which means that we are always going to be affected by that. Which is why you have something like hypermasculinization, which affects Black men in a very particular way. So you could have a Black man that's clearly queering fashion, doing something non-gender conforming, but because he is a Black man, it's not going to be viewed as such. I believe it's something that works on that intersection of like whatever colorism that Black men experience in particular. I don't want to like fudge any definition, but I do know that darker skinned Black men are treated differently than lighter skinned Black men. So that means that they're going to be perceived differently, especially when expressing themselves through fashion. You can even observe the iconic career of someone like Little Richard, who used to come on stages with pancake makeup, a very perfectly manicured mustache, really flashy outfits and crazy wigs. And you can notice how his individuality was very polarizing. He was either praised for breaking those masculine norms or completely ridiculed for it. There was rarely any in between. And in a lot of ways, that ended up setting the blueprint for the careers of people like Iggy Pop, Mick Jagger, Prince Rogers Nelson. As early as the 60s and 70s, you saw Little Richard wearing crop tops and tunics for his performances. This is a performer who was always transforming his look and transcending gender. And of course, this isn't something that just belongs to cis straight Black men. It's also a torch that you see people like Lil Nas X and Billy Porter carrying. We're really talking about the Harrification of Joe Jonas as if we didn't all see Billy Porter wear that dress tuxedo to the Oscars. Or that amazing moment from Lil Nas at the VMAs where he wore like a lilac Versace pantsuit dress combo.
Y'all look good? A little good?
Listen, I'm not gonna say I'm hating on the fit, but let's move on, okay?
Lil Nas X was pretty openly ridiculed for that outfit, but then people will get on the same internet and praise Harry Styles and Joe Jonas for a fucking tunic and some flare-cut jeans. I'm sitting here in the editing bay and realized that I also forgot Saucy Santana. Like, I don't know how that escaped my mind, but yeah, Saucy Santana, also another perfect example of non-gender conforming fashion, especially with that recent Paper magazine shoot. Like, seriously, Harry Styles, For as long as fashion has been tracked and recorded, I honestly feel like Black men in particular have been there doing non-gender conforming things. Like, we even had Dennis Rodman in the 90s. When these stellar fits were in tabloids and magazine spreads, they were met with overwhelming homophobia and never really praised. Like, tell me this is not the blueprint for the white TikTok soft boy. Are you kidding me? The white version of this has 2 million followers on TikTok with OPI on their corroded nail beds trying to sell me e-cigs. Y'all are so unserious. But I guess at the end of the day, it makes sense that because white people created all these stupid rules for gender that we currently operate with, that y'all are the only ones that would be able to quote unquote break them. But I do want to say that the rest of us, Black people specifically, embody that revolution quite naturally just by existing and expressing ourselves. Because at the end of the day, it's not just our drip that transcends gender, it's honestly our Blackness. In all honesty, being Black sets up a very interesting dynamic in where gender, while it wasn't created with us in mind, it impacts us the most. And of course, when you get into the messiness of binary thinking, Black versus white, and how society has set that up to be white, pure, feminine, and Black, dark, masculine, and how that leads to the over-masculinization of even Black women, or especially Black women. I think that dynamic alone means however we express ourselves, especially through fashion, is always going to transcend the barriers that white people put in place for us. Even when you have Black trans femmes in particular swinging into hyper feminine aesthetics, you have to think, wow, that shit wasn't created for any of us in the first place. Because any doll will come out here and tell you how most gender-affirming surgeries these days are trying to emulate a very particular image. And it just reminds you of the very glaring disparity in the treatment between, like, Black trans femmes and, of course, cis women, where you can have one party be the blueprint for what the other shows their doctor for their surgeries, but at the end of the day, who is afforded security and safety? And I'm not gonna lie, I like Harry Styles and his music. I do. I've been streaming Harry's house. I'm keeping Matilda in particular in the top 10. But what I'm saying is that white men don't always have to be the face of non-gender conforming what have you, especially when they're giving very middling attempts at androgyny, and then leveraging vague non-answers about their queerness that fans are just gonna take and peddle as representation. But of course, representation is a white supremacist construct, so I guess that's another can of big, fat, juicy Alaskan bullworms. So I guess what I'm saying is that there are Black artists that literally set this blueprint, and a lot of them are queer, and those are the ones that should be celebrated. Anywhomst, I'm Henny, and those are just my thoughts on non-gender conforming fashion. Also, I'm totally making these videos for y'all, so like, if you have any suggestions, like, have a conversation with me in the comments. My comments section, super dry. I want to talk to y'all. Hope you're all having a fantastic week. Thank you for entertaining this video with a view. Don't forget to leave a like, maybe leave a comment, and suggest something else for me to talk about. I love to run my mouth.